Hi, everyone. My name is Alexis Derrickson, and I'm a staff writer and digital media manager at The Profile. Today, I chatted with Savannah Jordan, the CEO and founder of Alpha Creative Agency, a multi-million-dollar female-owned and operated marketing agency. After encountering financial strain, relationship troubles, and the forced closure of her first startup at 22 years old, Savannah transformed her struggles into an avenue for success. Just 3 years after founding Alpha, she was producing more than 7 figures annually through work in digital marketing, website development, and brand strategy and design. We talked about building mental toughness despite hardships, her detailed morning routine as a CEO, the new era of marketing, and personal brand development. Savannah is proof of how a combination of passion, risk-taking, and creativity can and will reward you. Make sure to subscribe to The Profile for more interviews like this one, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you again so much for joining me today, Savannah. I'm excited to learn more about your flourishing multi-million-dollar company and also, though, what your personal insights are into the marketing industry and building a brand. I wanted to start with your origin story because you have a very interesting success story and what it took behind the scenes to get where you are today. So I wanted to start out with you became an entrepreneur at a very young age, obviously. I wanted to ask, what's the very first business you ever remember starting?
Well, I think it's pretty typical lemonade stand. That was one of them. I had to pay my parents like costs and expenses for that, for taking me to the grocery store and buying all the supplies and everything. The first real business that I started though, was our CJ Go business. I was 18 years old, which was essentially Uber for women. And I started that with my dad, like I said, when I was 18, and we scaled it. We're based in Orange County, California. We scaled it to LA and San Diego, within 3 years, and then ended up actually selling it. So that was probably the earliest real business that I started, but got to start with a good old lemonade stand.
Of course. And where do you think that passion for entrepreneurship came from so early on?
Yeah. So my dad was an entrepreneur for 20 plus years. He owned his own financial planning firm. And so I watched him from a very, very young age. I have a memory of us like really struggling, honestly, but knowing that it was something that he was working towards, and that he was creating, this life for us essentially, as an entrepreneur, and that there was struggle that was going to go into that. And I saw it really pay off, obviously, when I was, a late teenager, which was really, really cool to see just kind of that arc and that journey. And so I think a lot of my drive to be an entrepreneur came from seeing that. But I think I also have never, this is going to sound so bad. I've never been one to work well for other people. And so I've worked for other people before and have just always found myself being like, well, you could do it this way, or this is how you could scale faster or better, or any of those things. And I don't really take instruction well either. And so I just always was like, you know what, I've always wanted to work for myself. I also have always been very, very independent. And so I've never wanted to rely on anybody else to, give me money or create success for me or any of those things. And so I had a very certain life that I wanted for myself. And I think that I knew entrepreneurship was just going to be the way that I was going to achieve that. So.
Okay. And kind of going off of what you said with CJ Go, obviously it was a very successful company, and you said that you sold it. What takeaways did you carry with you from that experience? And did you do anything differently when starting Alpha?
Yeah. So obviously 2 very, very different industries. The biggest takeaway that I had was mentorship, honestly. So with CJ Go, excuse me, we had never started a transportation company before. This was, a ride hail company. Uber was just really, really starting to take off. And so that was something where, we felt like there was a huge gap in the market, obviously, given that there was nothing for just female drivers or female passengers to help women feel safe. And so I think it's an incredible concept, but we did not have any sort of mentorship or leadership from people who had already successfully started that kind of business, and been able to achieve the level of success that we were looking for. And with Alpha, and with my company, I feel like that was a massive difference because I've always understood the value of mentorship. If you can get in the back pocket of somebody who has already created the level of success that you're looking for, and you can learn from their mistakes and even skip over those mistakes, so that you yourself don't have to make them and scale faster, and more successfully and sustainably. I think that it's a huge difference maker. So mentorship was was a big, big takeaway for me because I saw such a huge difference in terms of how we operated both companies and how quickly we were successful.
Okay. And with that company, I believe I saw that you also helped start it with your dad. And so I wanted to ask what that was like going into business with a family member, and if there was any advice you would give to entrepreneurs who are thinking of doing a similar thing.
Yes. I think going into it with my dad, it was, for me, he was obviously somebody that I always looked up to as an entrepreneur. So for me, it felt like a no-brainer because this was something where I was really passionate about it. I wanted to bring it to life. But I was like, this is kind of along those same lines of mentorship, somebody that I can like glean from. And surprisingly enough, actually, my sister is actually my assistant now. And so I still work with family. But one lesson that I really learned with CJ and Go versus now is that if you're going to work with family, you have to have very clear boundaries around what you talk about at home versus what you talk about at work. Like now my sister knows, like we spend every Wednesday night, we go to dinner with my grandma and then she stays the night at my house and we get to have sister time. We do not talk about work whatsoever. Like if someone even tries to bring up work, we're like, absolutely not. We've taken the work hat off. We're done for the day. That kind of thing. We only talk about personal stuff. And then same thing with work. She knows that as soon as we clock in, as soon as I, start my meetings for the day, it's like, personal Savannah is out the door. I'm going to treat the same as every other team member that I have, which is very respectfully, but also, I'm going to hold you the same standard. And we're only going to be talking about work, not personal life. So that was not something that was a really clear boundary when I worked with my dad. And so I think it did put a strain on the relationship as it would anybody's during that time. Obviously, we've since recovered and we're obviously doing great, which is so nice because I love having my relationship with him. But also at the same time, I definitely think any other entrepreneur who's trying to work with family is set very, very clear boundaries.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the more personal side of things, before you started Alpha, you've talked before about how you went through a divorce and were struggling to make ends meet in your early 20s. And I want to ask what it felt like during that period of hardship and what specific things it taught you about mental resilience.
That's a great question and something that I really attribute that phase of my life to the amount of resilience that I have. I think going through, obviously don't talk about, the details of my divorce, but going through a divorce that young, getting married that young is really difficult when you're not trying to start a company, right? Any person, I think, who goes through a personal challenge like that is really going to struggle. But I was actually really grateful that I was starting a company at that time because I think it gave me something almost to like throw myself into in a way and be like, I have to be successful because I have no other choice at this point, And so I think there's a lot of, I talk about this a lot with some of my other friends who are entrepreneurs. I think there's a lot of people in our generation where it's like, when the going gets hard, they don't have the ability to just lean in and realize that it's temporary. But something that I was always taught growing up was that the struggle is short term, but you're working towards a long-term goal. And so if you can sacrifice that short-term period of time, it will always pay off in the end. And it very much did. I mean, I went from, when I started Alpha, I was working probably like 60 to 80 hours a week because I was still working part-time at my other marketing agency job. I had started my company. I had like 10 marketing clients of my own, and was living on my own for the first time, without my ex, and basically could barely afford to pay my own rent. And then, I was like eating one meal a day so I could also feed my dog. Like it was a very crazy time, but I knew that it was only temporary and I knew I had to get out of that situation, obviously. And so I think I basically just leaned in and I was like, I don't care what it takes. I'm just going to make it happen, essentially.
Okay. And obviously that built that confidence up within you to then start Alpha. Now it's turned into a multi-million-dollar business at just 25 years old. So that is an age
crazy.
Many young people, they might be opting instead to work for a company rather than for themselves. Do you feel like you used your youth to your advantage in Alpha?
Actually, no. I feel like sometimes it worked against me in a way. It was something where even back when I was doing CJ and Go, I felt like a lot of people didn't take me seriously because of my age. So that was something where I almost had to overcompensate in a way. The good news is now it's kind of evened out. Like when you're 25, I feel like you've learned enough lessons. And I feel like with the history that I have and the experience that I have, I can back it up. Obviously, yes, I am young, but I always joke like I've lived 9 lives before I was 21 or 25. And so I feel like for me, it almost was the opposite. So when I was, 18 to 21 working at CJ and Go and trying to scale that, I almost had to like dress overly conservative, speak overly conservative, do the work behind the scenes to really make up for my lack of industry knowledge, any of those things to make sure that people took me seriously. And now I think that's very much built who I am today. I'm able to be a little bit more casual, incorporate my personality into my brand because it's obviously my personal company. But yeah, I feel like it almost was detrimental. So like I had to overcompensate in a way, and now it's kind of evened out, which is really nice. So.
Awesome. This is actually where I first discovered you was on TikTok. Your video, My Psychotic CEO Morning Routine went viral on TikTok. So I wanted to ask you about what that routine has taught you about the systems that you have in place to foster creativity. And if there's 3 steps that you would recommend everyone implement in their lives right now, what would those be?
In terms of their morning routine?
Yeah. Or just, throughout their day, if it helps with your creativity and maintaining that level of confidence in your work.
Yeah, definitely. So something interestingly enough, like I think a different take on creativity than most people do. I actually don't think that you're going to feel organically creative all the time. And to expect that is so unrealistic. And I think it puts ourselves under really stressful conditions to be like, I have to be creative all the time. Something that I've definitely learned is that you have to set yourself up for success in all areas of your life and of your business, obviously, but especially in terms of creativity. There are days where I am staring at the computer, like right now I'm reworking our website copy and I'm like, I have no freaking clue what I want to be talking about right now. Like this all looks like gibberish to me. I have no creativity in me, like in my pinky right now, there's nothing. But some things that I love to do, to get me creative is like I drink, more coffee or more espresso. I turn on music and I have like a little dance party. I go on a walk with my dog, anything that kind of gets you out of that rut. But I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm not always going to feel creative. And there are things that I can do to get myself out of that funk and into feeling creative. So I think that's one thing that I would say for people who are struggling to feel creative is like, don't put that on yourself that you're always going to feel creative, but know the things that make you feel creative. Or even for me, like having a half a glass of wine and like cooking dinner. After that, I always feel creative just because I've loosened up and like I'm less stressed and things like that. I think in terms of my morning routine and how that has been able to foster creativity for me, those things that I do during my morning routine are huge. I think that part of it is that mental resilience piece, but I think part of it is the creativity piece. I do an ice bath because when you're a CEO at this level, you have a lot of stuff going on every single moment of every single day, and it can be really stressful. And I think to not take care of your mental health is a huge mistake that most entrepreneurs make. And so I have to set myself up for success in that way, obviously. And then I do exercise, meditations, visualizations, journaling, all of that not only helps my mental health, but also makes me feel more creative and gets the juices flowing. And then I start my day every day with content creation instead of logging on and checking in with our team or getting bombarded with client messages or things like that. I think just knowing how you operate best is what makes you the most creative and the most successful. So.
Okay. You've spoken also previously about how the old era of marketing is dead, referencing the industry saturation, growth of social media platforms, and different spending patterns in consumers. So I wanted to ask, how do you stay ahead of this? I know you spoke just a little bit now about how you don't jump right into it because then you might feel that overwhelming sense as well. But how do you still at the same time balance that mental clarity, but also staying ahead of marketing's constant evolution so that you can continue engaging with consumers?
I think it's constant research and trial and error. I am always the guinea pig for our clients in terms of marketing and sales strategies. Like, for example, when Threads, the new Instagram app, came out, I was the first person that was downloading it to figure out what was going on, what the vibes were on the platform, how we could potentially use it in a marketing strategy. And then I also think just really paying attention to how different audiences respond to different types of content, what people are talking about, what people are really craving. I think more than anything, not even just within marketing and sales, but just within human beings and how we behave, we're really entering, I think it's because of the younger generations that are really becoming adults at this point. We're entering this phase where people are like, cut the bullshit. It's like, sorry, I don't know if I can say that on your podcast.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. It's like, cut the bullshit. Like, we don't want to see this perfectly curated Instagram feed anymore. Like, for example, obviously Gen Z was super responsible for the whole like photo dump, situation on Instagram where it was like very candid photos that were not perfect by any means, but like showed, the behind the scenes of their life. People are craving that authentic side of human nature, but then also brands and businesses. And so I think that's a huge trend that we're going to start to see. And so I think in terms of staying ahead of trends, it's just sitting back and observing how people are operating, what people want, and also seeing like how they're talking about different things. Like I go and stalk all of like the people who follow like different influencers, different businesses and brands and see like what they're commenting, what are people talking about, what's going on in pop culture, what are people craving. So I think it's really just paying attention to human behavior and being able to see what platforms we're going to use to leverage what people are wanting essentially.
Okay. And then on a more broad level, when you're working with these individual brands, how do you change these strategies and adapt them depending on the size of the brand? Because you might have, I know you mostly have individual clients, I believe, but then if you're also working with a larger brand, how does that evolve?
Yeah, for sure. Excuse me. So we always set a sales or a revenue goal. We always set a marketing goal, obviously, for them. So we always set something where, okay, how much revenue are we going to make and how much do we want to grow this year, right? And so depending on where they're at in terms of their goals, like for example, we just had a brand who worked in Nordstrom or didn't work in Nordstrom. They were placed in Nordstrom and Dillard's. It was a female apparel company. So for them, they already had really, really great wholesale situations going on. Direct to consumer was a real big struggle for them. So one of their goals obviously was going to be visibility, brand recognition, really connecting with their audience in a way that they hadn't before. And their target demographic was going to be college-aged women or girls. And they obviously had a really big struggle getting in front of those people and connecting with them to get them to buy from their website versus wholesale. And so it kind of just depends on what their goals are. And so we have obviously very specific frameworks and strategies and ways that we can leverage, visibility or brand recognition, nurturing your audience, converting them into sales, depending on a lot of different facets of your business, your target demographic, your brand, and then also just where you're at in terms of your overall marketing and sales strategy as well.
Okay. And as much as your personal company is very important and has been so successful, there's also your personal brand image that you've developed as well. So how would you say that, what questions do you recommend people ask themselves when developing and evaluating their personal brands? And what do you think your personal brand says about you?
Yeah. So in terms of what my personal brand says about me, I think I've always been called a couple of things, the marketing girl next door or like the marketing cool girl. And I more attribute myself to the marketing girl next door. I don't think I'm very cool. So I nerd out about marketing and sales and entrepreneurship all the time. So I'm like, I'm not cool, but I think that's kind of what my my personal brand says about me. I'm very much somebody who wants to make success accessible to so many people. And so that's why I feel like it's so important. Like marketing to me is the core of what creates sales. And obviously sales is what creates success for brands or businesses. And so if I can get the word out to as many people as possible about what they can be doing within their marketing in order to see success, like I was able to walk away from my 9-to-5 within 1 month because of my marketing, because I had signed so many clients. Like that's what I want for so many people who are craving that level of success. So I think my personal brand is really all about making success accessible to so many people and helping women feel confident and more successful in their lives. I think in terms of developing your personal brand, I think there's two aspects to it. It's how do you want your target audience to feel when they're consuming your personal brand? And then how do you want to be portrayed? And a lot of times those two are very, very similar. So for me, I never wanted to be yes, we are a luxury brand, but my personal brand is a lot more casual. It's a lot more approachable. I never wanted to be someone who was like stuffy or a cool girl or, the popular mean girl who was like, you can't sit with us kind of thing. It's like, no, I want people to be like, okay, Savannah's the person that I can go to if I ever have any questions about business, marketing, sales, any of those things. And so that's how I want to be portrayed. And that's also how I want my target audience to feel as they're consuming my content and my brand. So it's always about, okay, how do you want to be portrayed? And then how do you want people to feel when they're consuming your brand?
Okay. And with your clients, when you're connecting with them, you said you want to come off, as approachable to an extent, because obviously if you're higher up, you're not going to build that same level of connection. So what are your recommendations for building, especially in the early stages, a connection with a client? And even if you have a short period of time, still maintaining that same level of trust and communication?
Yeah, I think it really starts with your content. It really starts with your marketing. And that's what I've always said. Like, we have people who sign with us as clients, whether it be for a power hour, which is $997, or for a massive agency package, which can go up to like $12K per month. We have people who sign onto those contracts and those packages without ever speaking to me. And it's literally just through consuming the content, because we help them feel so understood, so heard, and we help them trust us so much based off of what is important to them. So when it comes to developing that trust with a client, even if you only have a short amount of time, it starts with your marketing. It starts with your branding. It starts with helping them feel heard and seen, and showing that you are, whether you're selling a product or a service, the unique solution to what it is that they need or that they desire, or that they're struggling with. And I think after you've actually signed them as a client, it just comes down to helping people, again, feel seen, feel valued. No one ever wants to feel like a dollar sign. And so if you can go that extra mile, like for example, for our big agency clients, every time they sign on with us, we send them like a beautiful bouquet of flowers and like chocolate covered strawberries and stuff. We're like, we're so excited that you're here. We make them feel loved and valued, right? Because they are so important to us. They're so much more, than just a dollar sign to us, because we love working with our clients. And then I think it also just comes down to a really excellent level of client service and communication.
Okay. Looking retrospectively, I'm interested to hear your response to this as someone who is currently in college and is on the younger side of things. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Personally or professionally?
Both, if you'd like.
So I would say professionally, speak up. I think I did a lot of hiding behind my age because I was scared, that people would judge me for how young I was. I think I had really kick-ass ideas for an 18-year-old that I didn't talk about because I was worried that people would judge me. But I think that truly, and like so many freaking politicians say this all the time, like younger people are, the savior or the new generation, like they're going to be the ones that are going to save the world. But I genuinely believe, like, I watch TikTok and I watch how, younger people are talking about politics or business or how they want the world to work, and I genuinely feel like if we can get younger people's voices heard, it's going to be such a different world that we live in a couple of decades, which is going to be so exciting for me to see. But if I could go back to my 18-year-old self, I'd say speak up, talk about your ideas. And then I would also say, find the person who, like I said, you want to emulate their success and do not let them go. Like, get an internship, get in their back pocket, be the person that's like on their doorstep with coffee every morning. That's like, can I ask you a question, or can I just listen to how it is that you operate? Because I was very, very fortunate to be around a lot of really successful people and women, honestly, in leadership, where I was like, okay, I definitely want to emulate that, or no, maybe I don't want to do it that way, but it exposes you so much and gives you so much knowledge that you're not going to learn in college, right? Personally, I would say wait to make big life decisions until your frontal lobe is fully developed. I grew up in a environment where when you were young, you made a lot of really big life decisions, like college and what you wanted to do with your life, getting married, things like that. And I wish that I would never, take back my experiences, but I wish that I had like gone out and seen the world and found who I was as a person before I ever made any big life decisions, because life is really not that serious. So you gotta have fun with it, right?
Yeah. And this is a question that we always ask at the end of interviews with the profile. How do you define the word success?
Success to me is more about impact than anything. I think that you can make as much money as you want, but when you leave this world, you can't take it with you. But when you leave a lasting impact on people, whether it be in your community, your team, your family, your inner circle, you will be remembered forever. And so I think that that's the biggest thing for me that I want to do in this world. And I won't feel successful when I've created the most impact I possibly can.
Okay, great way to wrap it up. Thank you
Awesome.
again so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.